Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to SideChannel Attacks on Everyday Applications in South Seas CDNF with Taylor Hornby. Before we get started here, quick reminder that the Pony Awards are in the Mandalay B, C, and D at 6:30. Thank you for putting your phones on vibrate. And with that, let's welcome our speaker.
So thank you for coming. Today I'm going to be talking about side channel attacks on everyday applications. So you've probably seen side channels being used to break implementations of cryptography. If you haven't, here are a couple of examples. Once upon a time, there was a smart card that implemented RSA using the square and multiply algorithm. And it turned out that if you look really closely at the amount of power it uses over time, you can tell when it's doing a square, you can tell when it's doing a multiply, and from that pattern of squares and multiplies, you can leak the secret key. Another example are VoIP programs that use variable bitrate encoding. Here, when Alice and Bob are talking and the audio is simple, the packets are going to be short. When the audio is complicated, the packets are going to be long. So even though everything's encrypted, you can still kind of get some of the words that they're speaking and figure out what they're talking about. One of my favorite examples of side channels breaking cryptography are the acoustic cryptanalysis attacks. Here's a laptop that's doing GPG RSA decryptions, and there's a smartphone a couple feet away. And what it's doing is it's listening to the ultrasound that the computer's giving off. And from just that much information, it's possible to extract the secret RSA key. So side channels are really good at breaking cryptography, and that's because in most crypto protocols, there's a tiny key, and if that key gets leaked, it's totally catastrophic for the system. You can decrypt all the ciphertext, you can forge signatures, and all of that. But what I want to show you today is that we're starting to see side channels that go right for the privacy breach. So I call these cryptography-less side channel attacks. So let me show you a couple examples of that. These old dot matrix printers, if you set up a microphone and you listen to the sound they make, you can actually tell which letter they're printing. So if you set up a microphone in someone's office and they're typing or they're printing top secret documents, you can tell what's on them. Another one on Android smartphones, it's possible for an unprivileged app to use a cache side channel to tell when you're tapping versus swiping in another app. So for example, your calculator app that doesn't need any privileges can tell when you're tapping and swiping in your banking app. So that could be a privacy problem. So what I'm going to do today is show you a new attack that continues this trend of cryptography-less side channel attack. And you'll see that the attack isn't too spectacular. It's not the worst, most damaging thing in the world. But I think there's a lot more that can be done here, and I hope to convince at least one of you to take a look at my code and build something even better on top of it. So the program I'm going to be attacking today is the Lynx command line web browser. I chose to attack Lynx instead of a more popular browser like Firefox or Chrome, just because the code base is smaller, and in case I had to read it all, it made my research a bit easier. It was also a little bit easier to automate in my experiment scripts. So the type of attack I'm going to be showing you is an input distinguishing attack. So the scenario is there's a victim, and the victim is going to run a program on one of a set of known inputs. So the victim's either going to give the program input A, or input B, or input C, and there's an attacker who has all of those inputs, but they don't know which one the victim's running the program on, and they want to find out which one the victim ran the program on. So here's a little example scenario to help illustrate this. Alice on the left there, she just visited her doctor and she got diagnosed with an ear infection. And now she's curious about ear infections, and what she's going to do is look up ear infections on Wikipedia. Scarlett on the right knows that Alice went to her doctor, and Scarlett is curious what Alice got diagnosed with. Scarlett has 3 really good guesses. Scarlett thinks it's either strep throat, an ear infection, or chickenpox. And what Scarlett wants to do is use her SSH access to an unprivileged account on Alice's computer to find out which one of those 3 Wikipedia pages Alice is going to be visiting. So how it's going to work is Scarlett is going to log in with SSH, and Scarlett is going to run an unprivileged spy tool that's going to watch Alice's web browser through a cache side channel. And from the information it gleans through the cache side channel, it's going to determine which of those 3 pages Alice is visiting. Now, before I tell you how my attack works, let's cover some background on the cache side channel that it uses. So the side channel I'm using is called FLUSH+RELOAD. FLUSH+RELOAD was published in late 2013, early 2014, and it's proven to be incredibly good at breaking cryptography. So in the original paper, they broke GPG's implementation of RSA, and they did it requiring only one observation of a decryption. So to put that in perspective, all the cache side channels before it needed hundreds or thousands of observations in order to get enough information to steal those keys. But FLUSH+RELOAD just needed one. It also broke OpenSSL's implementation of ECDSA. Again, it only needed to observe one signature in order to extract the nonce and break its security. It's also sped up some cache side channel attacks on AES, and there's really a lot more papers. I can't even list them all on one slide. Just Google FLUSH+RELOAD and you'll find a bunch of that work. So FLUSH+RELOAD is really good at breaking cryptography, but once you understand how it works, you kind of start to think, well, it should be able to do a lot more. So there's a couple papers that are starting to use FLUSH+RELOAD in these cryptography-less side channel attacks. So this paper in particular, they broke a lot of cryptography, but what they also did was they showed that they could use the FLUSH+RELOAD side channel to count the number of items in user's shopping cart on an e-commerce website across virtual machines. Another one, this one, they got partway to implementing a cross-user account keylogger on PCs. So what they did was they measured precisely when each keystroke was happening. And since it's harder to move your fingers between some keys versus others, that kind of leaks some information about which key it is. They went even further than that, and they could tell sort of which group of key it was that you pressed. They couldn't tell exactly which key you're pressing, but they could narrow it down a little bit. So obviously that's a big privacy problem if we have keyloggers that let unprivileged users spy on the keystrokes of more privileged users. And this attack that I showed you that lets your calculator spy on whether you're tapping or swiping in your banking app, this one uses FLUSH+RELOAD under the hood too. So how does it work? I'm going to simplify this explanation a lot just to make it fit in a 25-minute briefing. If you want all the details, read the original paper. In my opinion, it's super well written, and I highly recommend it. So when Alice runs a program, what the operating system does is it loads the binary into physical memory, and it sets up a process, and then it uses the page tables to map some of that virtual address space into the physical memory. Now, when Scarlett comes along and runs the exact same program, the operating system could load a second copy into physical memory, but that would be wasteful because the program's not changing. So what it does instead is it just uses the page tables to map Scarlett's virtual memory into the exact same physical memory. And this should be okay because the memory is read-only, right? So there should be no way that Scarlett and Alice, there should be no way that they can influence each other through this shared memory. But in reality, there's a cache in front of the memory, and all of the lines of memory are either in the cache or out of the cache. And what the cache really is some shared state between Alice and Scarlett that they can both influence and that they can both be influenced by. So the way FLUSH+RELOAD uses this is that when Alice's program is executing code, that code's going to get read from memory. And as it's being read from memory, it's going to get loaded into the cache. Now, if Scarlett comes along and reads from the same address of code, that read is going to happen really fast because it's already in the cache. If Scarlett reads from some memory that Alice hasn't been executing in a while, that read's going to be slow. It won't be in the cache. So sort of by timing reads to various addresses in memory, Scarlett can tell which code Alice has been executing recently. So When you put it together, it looks like this. Scarlett can sprinkle some light bulbs all over the code, and when Alice's thread of execution passes by one of those light bulbs, it's going to light up, and Scarlett's going to see that. Then what Scarlett can do is flush the cache to turn off all the light bulbs, and wait a little bit for Alice to run some more code. This time, Alice runs the bar and the baz functions, and Scarlett sees those light bulbs light up. Scarlett flushes the cache to turn them off. Scarlett waits a little bit for Alice to run some more code. And now Scarlett sees that Alice is running the bar function. So how do we use FLUSH+RELOAD to implement this attack? So let me just remind you what we're doing. We have Scarlett, who has SSH access to an unprivileged account on Alice's computer. And Scarlett wants to use the information she can get through FLUSH+RELOAD to tell which web page it is that Alice is visiting. So the very first thing Scarlett needs to do is decide where to put those light bulbs. It would be super nice if Scarlett could just put a light bulb on every single cache line and get almost perfectly precise view into which branches Alice's program are taking. But in practice, FLUSH+RELOAD only lets you put 4 or 5 light bulbs down before it stops working reliably. So one way you could decide where to put them is to read the lynx source code and then look at the source code to some Wikipedia pages and sort of see what the major features are that distinguish them. And then put your light bulbs on the code that'll execute differently on the different pages. And that's what I did originally, but it's a super long and tedious process. So what I ended up doing was writing an automation tool where you just give it a list of functions. In the lynx case, I just gave it the list of all the functions in the HTML parser. And what it gives you back is a list of 4 or 5 locations that you can put light bulbs on, and they'll be good at distinguishing the inputs. So when Scarlett runs the spy tool, this is what she's going to see. This string here is a representation of all the light bulbs that light up as Alice is visiting the ear infection Wikipedia page. So the letter A corresponds to HTML stack item getting executed, B to HTML stack dupe getting executed, and so on. So what Scarlett is trying to do is recognize this string as the ear infection Wikipedia page. And the way Scarlett does that is with a 3-stage attack. So in the first stage, what Scarlett is going to do is just spy on herself as she visits those 3 pages that she thinks Alice might be visiting. And she's going to get a bunch of these light bulb strings, and she's going to save those light bulb strings to files. Now, in the second stage of the attack, Scarlett's going to do the actual spying on Alice. She's just going to get one of these looking strings, and she's going to save that to a file. Now, in the final stage of the attack, what Scarlett is going to do is she's going to take that spy sample and she's going to compare it to all of her training samples. So what she's looking for is the training sample that's closest, most similar to the spy sample. And the way I'm measuring similarity is by the Levenstein distance, which is the number of basic edits, so inserts, deletes, and replacements you need to transform one string into the other. So it's really as simple as that. Let me just visualize it for you here. So right now we're in stage 1, and Scarlett is training on the strep throat page. So Scarlett takes 3 training samples of the strep throat page, and we see them clustered together here because they're similar strings. Now Scarlett's training on the chickenpox page, and again we see them clustered together because they're similar strings. Finally, Scarlett trains on the ear infection page, and now the training's done. Scarlett has 3 samples of all the pages she thinks Alice might visit. The next step is to spy on Alice, and Scarlett gets this unknown sample. So all Scarlett does is she measures the distance between that unknown sample and all the samples in her training set, and she finds the closest one. So in this case, the closest one is for a sample for the ear infection page. So Scarlett guesses correctly that Alice indeed visited the ear infection page. So I explained the attack to you with only 3 samples for 3 pages, but in my actual experiments, I'm doing this with 100 pages and taking 10 training samples. So I can pick a random page out of 100 pages, and more than 9 times out of 10, it's going to guess correctly which page I visited. So now I can demo this for you. Let me just fix my SSH connections here. And I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it. Okay. So here we have Alice. Alice has a list of 10 URLs, 10 Wikipedia pages. And we have Scarlett. Scarlett has the same list of 10 Wikipedia pages. And I've already completed stage 1 of the attack. So Scarlett has already done her training. I'll just show you. In each one of these files is one of those light bulb strings. These are all the training samples. There's 10 of them for every page, and the name of the file is just a hash of the URL. So for example, if we want to look at one, so here's one of the things Scarlett got when she was visiting one of those pages. So now we're in stage 2 of the attack. What Scarlett's going to do is start her attack tool. So let me do that. If this, okay, here we go. So I'm telling it the path to the binary that Alice is going to be running. I'm telling it where to save the spy sample. And I'm telling it where to put those light bulbs. So now Scarlett's spy tool is running. And we can come over to Alice. Let's pick a random URL. So 7, okay, so it's asking us to visit the Wikipedia page about YouTube. So let's do that. So Alice loads the Wikipedia page. Alice can browse around for a little bit. Alice is done browsing. She can exit her browser. And now Scarlett can stop her attack tool. So let's see what kind of samples we got here. So we got 3 files. 2 of them are really small, so these are just noise. It thought Alice was running her web browser when she didn't, so we can just discard these. This file here is a bit bigger. This is the actual recording of the information that's coming through FLUSH+RELOAD as Alice visited that page. So let me open that and show it to you. Seven, 5, 8. There we go. So that's what it looks like. Now what Scarlett's going to do is she's going to compare this string to all of her training samples, and she's going to find the one that's most similar. So I have a tool to do that. Let me run that for you. So I'm giving it the path to the spy sample. I'm telling it where all those training samples are. And I'm telling it to truncate those strings to 1,000 characters. So all that does is just speed up the Levenshtein distance computation, since the algorithm's quadratic in the string length. So if I run this, what we should see, if the attack worked, is that it'll give us the URL to the YouTube Wikipedia page. And indeed, it correctly identified the page that Alice visited. So it worked. Thank you. So All of my code and experiment data is up on GitHub. There's actually 2 more attacks up there that I didn't really include in this talk. One of them is pretty much the same sort of idea, except instead of Wikipedia pages, it's PDF files. It's an attack against libpoppler. It works just as reliably. Another attack is one against TrueCrypt. So TrueCrypt has that hidden volume feature where you can put a hidden volume in a normal one, and all it does is it watches as the user mounts a TrueCrypt volume, and it'll tell you if it's a hidden volume or not by watching the branch that TrueCrypt takes. You can also find the white paper up here, and the talk slides will be up there later too. So if you're interested in improving on this work, I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. I definitely don't think my attacks are the best possible attacks. There's a getting started guide in the GitHub repository. If you follow that, you should be able to reproduce the experiments on your own system if it's vulnerable in half an hour at most. And if you run into any trouble, just send me an email and I'll help you out. So hopefully I've convinced you that side channels are good for a lot more than just breaking cryptography. We're starting to see these cryptography-less side channel attacks where we're going right for the privacy breach instead of leaking a crypto key and then decrypting ciphertexts and things like that. So I think that's the direction this is headed, and I can't wait to see what future attacks are created. So I've got probably a lot of time for question and answer. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you. Yep.
So how would you propose an attacker actually train the scenarios that you actually propose?
So the question is, how would an attacker train in the scenario? The training can either happen on the victim system, or it can happen on a different system, although less reliably. So I can't remember the exact number, but I think if you train on a similar system that isn't exactly the same, at least the one I tried, the reliability dropped down to, I think, 75% or something like that. So it's still better than random. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a suggestion for defense?
I haven't been keeping up to speed with defense research in this area. But there's one really good paper that has a good section on defense. Let me see if it's one of these. I think this paper, Cache Template Attacks, had a good section on the possible defense options. But basically, they boil down to eliminating shared memory. There's some cool stuff you can do with new Intel technology that lets you separate the cache and stuff like that. But yeah, hopefully that's a good enough answer. Any more? All right, looks like that's it. Thank you very much.